So there are two Call of Duty campaigns that I would consider bad. Like, they're just not good stories. One of which I already rewrote to make a little better. And here is another one. That second game that I think is a very bad campaign is Call of Duty Vanguard. But here's the thing. It actually has the bones of a pretty good story if you just change a couple of things. So what I did with this video is I took the material that they gave us with Call of Duty Vanguard, rearranged it, rewrote some of it, and I think we put together a pretty good story. So without further ado, this is how I would rewrite the story of Call of Duty Vanguard to make it quite a bit better. But if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Without further ado, this is my story of Call of Duty Vanguard.
The SOE had recruited the six of us under my command for one reason: to retrieve files on the top-secret Project Phoenix, the last gasp of the Third Reich. A coalition of allied commandos thrown together and aimed at where our enemy was most vulnerable. This was meant to be our first and only mission.
So in the first mission of Call of Duty Vanguard, our characters are moving throughout a train. Now this train is going to Hamburg, Germany. But here's the thing. At this point, we don't know why all of these characters are working together on what is called Task Force Vanguard. And oddly, throughout the entire campaign, this is never explained to us. At the end of the Black Ops Cold War Warzone story, we met someone by the name of Carver Butcher.
I'm Captain Butcher of the SOE. Well, retired Captain Butcher these days. I was in charge of the SOE during the war. Ever heard of Vanguard?
He was the head of Task Force Vanguard. This character was to never be seen throughout the entire campaign of Call of Duty Vanguard. We are going to change that because, believe it or not, there is a story as to how Task Force Vanguard was created. It is a story found inside this comic book that was released after the launch of Call of Duty Vanguard. This story inside of here is far better than the entire campaign of Call of Duty Vanguard. So we're gonna add this in before this mission. Let me explain. Now, I do think one of the things that they do fairly well within the campaign of Vanguard is flesh out the individual characters. They just never explain why any of them joined the task force. So instead of just going back and showing random missions as to what happened with these various characters throughout World War II, this time we're gonna all tie them together with Vanguard. So after the little introduction on the train, we immediately go into a flashback with Arthur Kingsley. We are in France in the year 1944, but instead of going on this entire mission that we normally go on in Vanguard, this time we are going to follow what happens in the comics. This time, Kingsley is going to lead his men to a church in which it gets surrounded by German soldiers. They are defending themselves, or you playing as Kingsley are defending yourselves against the oncoming Germans, when all of a sudden the door busts open. Everyone freaks out, but we realize that this is one of us, none other than Carver Butcher. Now, why is he here? Is he here to save you guys? No, he is there to recruit Arthur Kingsley. But he says he can only bring Kingsley with him. However, Arthur, being the fearless leader that he is, turns down the offer and says the only way that he is joining him is if his entire squad gets out with him as well. Butcher then walks away and says you know where to meet him or get a hold of him. So the rest of the mission is Arthur Kingsley trying to survive amongst his other squad members inside the church. And hence, we hear the first of Vanguard and how he is eventually recruited. However, he hasn't accepted yet. Next, we must move to our next member of Task Force Vanguard, this one being Polina Petrova. And I think there's definitely some sections of her story from the campaign that you want to keep in. First of all, why did she join? The story essentially of revenge. So I think you leave in this part.
Oh God!
Help your country more than you know. And you make your old man proud.
Pasha.
You'll never take the motherland, you Ugloki! Shut your mouth!
I should have been here, Papasha.
You take care of each other.
So in showing this, it gives us some background as to what exactly she's doing. And in her next mission, she then picks up in the USSR behind enemy lines and basically trying to stop the German invasion of Russia. Now, as the fight ensues, we get to see how deadly Polina actually really is. And once again, this is where the comics come in. And instead of having this entire mission that is purely based off of revenge, you get to see that sort of ending.
Don't worry. I'll hunt him down next. You thought you'd take my city and crush my people. You tried to break me, but you failed. You created Lady Nightingale. And now, she's destroyed you.
Sie ziehen Leine! Lass nicht nachlassen! Ich muss nachlassen! Hier hat's einen erwischt! Was sind
but it is then followed up by Butcher showing up right behind her. Butcher then starts to talk to her with what is going on, why she wants revenge, and gives her an offer to help her get revenge on the Germans and put an end to them. This is when Polina Petrova joins Task Force Vanguard. Now, going back to that very first mission in the game, one of the things that always kind of sucked about this is as you're going through this mission, you start to see how these characters are working together. However, you are playing as a character by the name of Novak, and by the very end of this mission, you end up, and everyone within Vanguard ends up getting captured. But here's the thing, there's a giant scene where the bad guy by the name of Freisinger kills your character. The problem is this is the first mission that you've played in the game, and you have absolutely no attachment to the character, but not only that, you have no idea who this character even is.
Quite a counter.
You give your mongrels what you say not deserve!
Well, as it turns out, all of the story revolving around Novak is once again in the comics. You see, his story takes place in Serbia, specifically Axis-occupied Serbia. However, he is an undercover spy. Let me tell you this would have made a really cool mission. Now, while he's being an undercover spy, once again, Butcher ends up showing up to talk to him, telling him that they need him on his team. Now, here's the issue. When Butcher came in, he killed one of the guards, and of course, that was going to be noticed by the Germans in the area. So Novak, being the smart spy that he is, fires his weapon, and as the German soldiers come, he tells them that he is chasing down the person who has killed the guard, giving Butcher time to escape, and then eventually having Novak follow behind him. Novak quickly joins Butcher in Task Force Vanguard, and if they would have shown him being a spy, the rest of this scene would have meant a whole lot more.
Dispose of that. Put the rest in the truck.
For the next two characters, you actually really don't have to change much. Starting with Wade Jackson, you can pretty much leave his flying missions the way that they are until the very end.
Eventually, your wings will get burned.
In case you don't know what happens, essentially Wade Jackson ends up crashing onto an island, and he is injured but needs to escape. He ends up essentially stealing a plane and escaping with it. What I think would have worked a lot better is if, as they were trying to escape from the island, if their planes that they were going to escape on exploded, but the last minute another plane flies in, and lo and behold, on that plane is none other than Butcher. Butcher explains the situation and then recruits Wade Jackson to the team. That ties in the missions that they wanted to have in the game, along with the recruiting for Task Force Vanguard. Now, the last character that needs to be recruited goes by the name of Riggs, and essentially what happens during his mission in the campaign is he has some bad higher-ups working above him who kind of make some poor decisions, and Riggs tries to take things into his own hands, let's just say.
He was perfect for my team. Even if he does have a mean right hook.
So Riggs ends up in jail, or at the very least court-martialed, and while he's sitting there in his cell, someone shows up on the other side. That, of course, being Butcher, essentially saying that they are going to break out together because he needs Riggs on his team. This one's pretty simple. It would have fit in pretty easily to have a mission with them sneaking out of a prison right after he gets put inside, therefore joining Task Force Vanguard. And that, the very next comic, is them getting aboard the train and going to Hamburg. And if that all happened, then this very first mission that we have within Call of Duty Vanguard would make a lot more sense. We would know how all of these characters came together, who they are, and it would very much so increase the gravity of the situation at the end of this mission.
Beethoven's Fourth Sonata has exquisite, but demanding passages that deserve my full attention. Unlike you. Does the Negro give orders in English too?
You see, at this point, if we were introduced to the bad guy, we would really see how evil they actually are. Killing one of our teammates with Novak after getting a little bit of his backstory, it would have a lot more depth to it. However, that didn't happen, but we're just going to pretend with my story it actually does. And then after this, as we know, our characters get captured and taken as prisoners.
Novak. Jesus Christ.
So this leads us to the section of the game where our team, Task Force Vanguard, has all been taken prisoners. And again, with more backstory and how they came together, this section would make a lot more sense. And honestly, the section where they're actually captured here is probably the most interesting. And if we traded out some of those missions where breaking up this section of the game and instead made it so maybe there was actually missions inside the prison, talking to the other prisoners, things like that, I think that would have fared a lot better. But I still have one other problem with this game as a whole, and that is the bad guy of Freisinger. You see, here is what the big twist of Call of Duty Vanguard actually was.
Project Phoenix would succeed. Hitler is paid for his weakness. And now history will remember him as we do. A failure and a coward.
The Red Army is nearly upon us. And Berlin is burning. But from the ashes shall rise our vision for something greater. To the Fourth Reich.
So essentially, they establish off of the bad mustache man, that's what I'm going to call him from the rest of this video to try not to get this demonetized, but the bad mustache man has died and Freisinger is going to take over as the Fourth Reich. That is the big twist. Well, here is the big problem. At the very end of the game, pretty much right as we find this out, our characters track down Freisinger, kill him. Game over. Entire story pointless.
You're not worth it.
So let's change one thing. That speech that's given at the very end, let's take out Freisinger and replace it with the bad mustache man. Now, we're going to keep the story the same, whereas the Americans think that the bad mustache man is dead. But like we have heard in so many conspiracy theories, he faked his own death and he is here inside the prison. And if you've ever heard this story before, there's this theory that Bad Mustache Man ended up escaping World War II and living out the rest of his life in South America. So when our team goes to track down the Bad Mustache Man at the very end and chases him away, he ends up escaping. And this would then lead us into the post-seasonal story of Task Force Vanguard. We'd essentially have the entire origin story of them, and they would be trying to hunt down the Bad Mustache Man, hence why they end up in the caldera. This gives you a better campaign story, a better bad guy, a better origin story for Task Force Vanguard, and a reason why they end up in the caldera other than hunting down Nazi gold like they originally showed at the end. Now, I want to be clear, I still don't think everything that I did to this story makes it a good Call of Duty campaign. However, I do think it makes it quite a bit better. I think it fits better with the post-seasonal story and adds a little bit of mystery when it comes to the escaped Bad Mustache Man. Let me know what you think. Do you like my story better? Do you like the original better? If you want to see me do more of these style videos where I kind of rewrite some bad parts of Call of Duty history, let me know. But keep in mind, this story, the one with Freisinger and the one that was there originally, is a part of the Call of Duty cinematic universe.